Amara had barely caught her breath when Miho's arms wrapped around her. His closeness should have felt safe, but instead, guilt burned through her veins. He tilted her chin up, studying her face. "Tell me the truth," he said. And she knew whatever she said next would change their lives forever.
Do not forget to subscribe to know what happens next.
Amara's pulse was still racing from Kofi's hands when Miho's lips found her neck, his palm sliding between her thighs to discover just how ready she was. "Why are you so wet down there?" he murmured against her skin, and she couldn't tell him it wasn't for him, couldn't admit that her body was still singing from another man's touch even as she melted into his arms. The question sent a shiver down her spine as his fingers pressed against the soaked fabric of her underwear, right there in the entryway of his Gangnam penthouse, where anyone stepping off the elevator could see them. "I was thinking about you all day," she breathed, which wasn't entirely a lie. She had thought about Miho, even while Kofi had her pinned against his studio wall 90 minutes ago, even while she was gasping another man's name. Her body was a traitor, still swollen and sensitive, still aching from being thoroughly satisfied yet somehow wanting more. The human body was strange that way, capable of endless hunger even when fed, especially when guilt made every sensation sharper. Miho's dark eyes searched hers, and for a terrifying moment she thought he could see right through her, could read every guilty secret written on her flushed skin. His fingers hooked into the waistband of her panties, teasing but not quite removing them, torturing her with the almost. She could feel her heart hammering against her ribs, could feel the wetness between her legs increasing despite her fear, despite knowing this was wrong on every possible level. "All day." His voice was velvet and suspicion. "Then why do you feel like you've already been touched tonight?" Her breath caught in her throat. The apartment suddenly felt too hot, too small, the walls closing in. "What do you mean?" "You're wetter than you've ever been just from thinking about me," he said, his hand sliding higher, fingers dancing along her inner thigh with maddening slowness. "And you're trembling. Your pupils are dilated. You smell like—" He leaned in, breathing deep against her neck, and she felt her whole body tense. "You smell like sex, Samara." Panic and arousal warred in her chest, two opposing forces trying to tear her apart. She could feel the evidence of Kofi still inside her, could feel the ghost of his hands on her hips, could remember the way he'd groaned her name in that studio surrounded by half-finished sculptures of bodies intertwined. And now Miho was here, his familiar touch awakening different nerves, different needs, and she was caught between two worlds she'd never meant to inhabit simultaneously. "I started without you," she said quickly, letting her voice go breathy and desperate, channeling every ounce of acting ability she possessed. "In the car on the way here. I couldn't wait, Miho. I needed you so badly I thought I'd lose my mind." It was a gamble, a dangerous lie built on a foundation already crumbling, but she watched his expression shift from suspicion to dark hunger. His hand finally slid beneath her panties, fingers gliding through her slickness with an ease that made her knees weak, and she had to bite her lip to keep from gasping because she was so sensitive, so thoroughly used already that even this gentle exploration felt overwhelming. The silence that followed was deafening. Miho stared at her like she was a stranger, like he couldn't reconcile the woman he loved with the one standing in front of him now. His breathing was harsh, irregular, and she could see him fighting for control, fighting not to fall apart or lash out or both. "Did you at least shower?" he asked finally, his voice so hollow it scared her. "Did you at least have the decency to wash him off before you came here?" No, the admission felt like swallowing glass. "I came straight here. I was running late and I didn't think." "You didn't think," he repeated incredulously. "You didn't think I'd notice? You didn't think I'd taste the difference? Or did you just not care?" His hands clenched into fists at his sides, and she could see the tendons standing out in his forearms. "You let me put my mouth on you, Amara. You let me taste him inside you. You looked me in the eyes and lied while I made you come on my fingers. What part of any of that deserves an apology?" "All of it," she sobbed, tears streaming down her face now, hot and shameful. "I know I fucked up. I know I'm terrible. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't know what's wrong with me, Miho. I love you, I swear to God I love you, but with him I feel. Stop. He turned away from her, hands going into his hair, and she could see his whole body trembling with rage or grief or both. Don't tell me how he makes you feel. Don't you dare try to explain this away like it's some kind of emotional journey. You cheated. You lied. You betrayed me in the worst possible way. Those are choices, Amara. Actions. Not feelings. Then what do you want from me? She demanded, anger finally breaking through the guilt like a fist through glass. You want me to beg? To grovel? To cut myself open and bleed for you? I already said I'm sorry. What more can I give you? I want you to tell me the truth, Miho said, spinning around to face her again, and the look in his eyes was devastating. The whole truth. No more lies, no more omissions. How long has this been going on? She closed her eyes, took a shaking breath. 3 weeks. How many times? 8. The number felt obscene spoken aloud. Maybe 9. I lost count. His jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind. And tonight? What did you do with him tonight? I need to know what I'm competing with. Miho, please. Tell me. His voice cracked completely. I need to know. I need to understand what was worth throwing us away. So she told him, because he deserved at least that much truth. She told him about meeting Kofi at an art exhibition 3 weeks ago, about how they'd started talking about being African in Korea, about feeling displaced and othered. She told him about the instant connection, the way Kofi saw her not as Miho's exotic girlfriend, but as a whole person with her own complexities. She told him about the first kiss outside the exhibition, the way it had felt like coming home and committing treason at the same time. And the first time you slept with him? Miho asked, his voice mechanical now, like he was reading from a script. A week after we met. At his studio. I told you I was having dinner with Sarah. Sarah's been in Busan for a month, Miho said flatly. I checked. Of course he had. She continued, telling him about each encounter, how guilty she'd felt after, but how she kept going back because Kofi made her feel powerful and desired in ways she couldn't fully explain. She told him about the texts, the stolen hours, the elaborate lies she'd constructed to maintain both relationships. And tonight, Miho pressed, his knuckles white where he gripped the edge of his marble countertop. What happened tonight specifically? Tonight he had me against the wall of his studio, she said quietly, the words bitter on her tongue. He was inside me for maybe 25 minutes. I came twice. Then I got dressed and came here to you. She watched the words land like physical blows, watched Miho flinch with each detail. He wanted me to stay. He said we should tell you, that sneaking around was killing him. But I said no. I said I wasn't ready to choose. Miho's hand slammed against the wall, making her flinch. A picture frame rattled, but didn't fall. Jesus Christ, Amara. Do you hear yourself? Do you understand how completely fucked up this is? You're talking about choosing between us like we're menu options. Like I'm some kind of consolation prize you can just keep on the side while you figure out what you really want. That's not, she started, but he cut her off. It's exactly what it is, he said. You want to have it both ways. The stability I provide, the family, the visa sponsorship, the nice apartment in Gangnam. But also the excitement of sneaking around with someone who makes you feel, what did you say, powerful? Desired. He laughed bitterly. I made you feel desired every single day. I told you you were beautiful. I defended you to my family even when it cost me. I changed my entire life to make room for you. And it still wasn't enough. It's not about enough, she said desperately, trying to make him understand. You're everything, Miho. You're successful and kind, and you defend me when it matters. But with you, I always feel like I'm performing. Like I have to be the perfect girlfriend who doesn't embarrass you in front of your colleagues, who learns Korean fast enough to impress your mother, who laughs at her passive-aggressive comments about my skin being interesting or asking if my hair is real. I never asked you to be perfect, Miho said, but his voice was weak now, uncertain. You didn't have to ask, Amara shot back, finding her footing in this argument, because at least anger was familiar, at least righteous indignation was easier than drowning in guilt. It's in every look your mother gives me, Every time your friends switch to rapid Korean when I enter a room specifically so I can't follow, every business dinner where I'm introduced as your friend from work instead of your girlfriend of 6 months. Every time your brother makes jokes about African women and you just laugh uncomfortably instead of shutting him down. That's not fair, Miho started. Isn't it? She interrupted. Last month at that company dinner, your boss asked how we met and you said I was teaching you English. You didn't mention that we've been together for half a year. You didn't mention that I have a master's degree in literature. You reduced me to a service provider because God forbid anyone at your prestigious firm know you're actually dating a black woman. The words hung between them, heavy with months of resentment she'd been swallowing. Miho's face crumpled. I was trying to make it easier for you. My boss is old-fashioned. I thought. You thought making me invisible would protect me? Amara's voice rose. You thought erasing our relationship in public while expecting me to play the perfect girlfriend in private was sustainable? I've been shrinking myself for 6 months trying to fit into your world, and with Kofi I don't have to shrink. I can take up space. I can be loud and opinionated and fully myself without worrying that I'm embarrassing him or his family. So this is my fault? Miho's voice rose to match hers, the dam finally breaking. You cheated on me because my culture isn't welcoming enough? Because my family has some outdated prejudices? That gives you the right to fuck someone else. No, she said firmly, her voice dropping back down. I cheated because I'm selfish and weak and I wanted to feel good without thinking about consequences. Because when Kofi touched me, I didn't have to be anyone but myself. Because for those stolen hours in his studio, I could forget about being the foreign girlfriend trying to prove she belongs. She took a shuddering breath. But I'm also trying to tell you that what we have, it's not sustainable, Miho. You want me to assimilate completely, and I can't do that without losing fundamental parts of myself. He was quiet for a long moment, processing. When he spoke again, his voice was raw. I would have worked on it. If you'd talked to me instead of fucking someone else, I would have tried to change things. I would have stood up to my family more. I would have introduced you properly at that dinner. I would have defended you better to my brother. But you never gave me the chance. You just decided I was hopeless and went looking elsewhere. Would you really have? Amara challenged, needing to push this to its conclusion. Would you have stood up to your mother when she asked, in front of your entire family, if I had AIDS because I'm African? Would you have corrected your brother when he made that joke about needing to check if I had a tail? Would you have held my hand in public instead of walking 3 steps ahead of me like I was following you instead of with you? Miho's silence was answer enough. They both knew the truth. He loved her, but he loved her quietly, privately, conditionally. He loved her as long as she didn't make waves, as long as she played by his family's rules, as long as she accepted being hidden when convenient. That's what I thought, Amara said softly, the fight draining out of her. You love me, I don't doubt that. But you love me in private. In public, I'm something you're not quite proud of, not quite ready to claim fully. And I'm not blaming you, your culture, your family expectations, they're real pressures. But I can't be with someone who's ashamed of me, even a little bit, even just in certain contexts. I'm not ashamed of you, Miho protested, but even as he said it, they both heard the lie. You are, though, she said gently. Maybe not consciously. Maybe you don't want to be. But when your mother asks about grandchildren and you change the subject instead of telling her we've talked about having kids someday, that's shame. When your colleagues invite you to drinks and you go alone instead of bringing me, that's shame. When you refer to me as your friend at professional events, that's shame, Miho. This is getting brutal, and we're not even halfway through. If you're invested in this mess, hit subscribe and drop a like right now. Comment below, is Amara right about Miho's shame? Or is she just deflecting from her own betrayal? I need to hear your take before we continue, because what comes next will challenge everything you think you know about this situation. Asterisk, asterisk. Tears were streaming down Miho's face now, and seeing him cry made Amara's chest ache with a pain that felt physical. I tried, he said, his voice breaking. I tried so hard to make you feel included. I learned to cook Kenyan food. I read books about African history. I went to your church even though I'm not religious. What more was I supposed to do? Be brave, Amara whispered. Be brave enough to love me out loud, not just in private. Be brave enough to tell your mother that her racism isn't acceptable. Be brave enough to risk their disapproval for the sake of us. She wiped at her own tears. But I understand why you couldn't. Family is everything in your culture. Filial piety, social harmony, saving face, they're not just concepts, they're the foundation of everything. And I respect that, I really do. But it means we were doomed from the start, because I need someone who can put me first sometimes, and you need someone who fits seamlessly into your existing life. They stood in the wreckage of their relationship, both knowing it was over, but neither quite ready to say the final words. The apartment felt too quiet now, too still, like even the walls were holding their breath. Finally, Miho moved toward his bedroom, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I need you out of here, he said without looking at her. Tonight. Pack whatever you need and leave. The rest of your things, I'll box them up and you can arrange to pick them up later. Miho. Please, Amara. His voice broke completely, shattering like glass. Please just go. I can't look at you right now without seeing him touching you. I can't be in the same room without smelling him on your skin. I can't think straight with you here. So please, for once, give me what I'm asking for and just leave. She gathered her things in numb silence, her phone charger from the bedside table, her toothbrush from the ensuite bathroom, the spare clothes she kept in his drawer organized with military precision. Miho stayed in his bedroom with the door closed, and she could hear him crying through the walls, harsh sobs that made her own tears flow faster. It took everything she had not to go to him, not to try to fix what she'd broken beyond all repair. Instead, she left his apartment key on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker they'd picked out together, the one with the timer function she'd loved because it meant waking up to fresh coffee. She took one last look around the penthouse, at the couch where they'd spent lazy Sundays watching Korean dramas she barely understood, at the kitchen where he'd tried to teach her to make kimchi, at the window overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline where they'd stood countless times talking about the future they'd never have now. Then she walked out into the Seoul night, pulling the door closed with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything. The elevator ride down felt eternal. 43 floors of mirrors reflecting her tear-stained face, her smudged makeup, her guilty eyes. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who'd destroyed a good thing because she couldn't figure out how to be whole on her own, who'd needed two men to feel complete and ended up with neither. She didn't go to Kofi's. She couldn't face his kindness right now, couldn't handle the way he'd try to comfort her, to convince her this was all for the best, that she and Miho were never right for each other anyway. Instead, she found a love hotel in Hongdae, one of those anonymous places that rented rooms by the hour, where no one asked questions and discretion was guaranteed. The room was small and clinical, decorated in that particular aesthetic of Korean love hotels, mirrors on the ceiling, mood lighting, a bathroom visible through frosted glass. She sat on the bed staring at her phone, watching messages pile up from both men. Miho sending cold, formal texts about logistics, when she could pick up her things, how they'd handle their shared contacts, whether she wanted the coffee maker they'd bought together. Kofi asking if she was okay, if she needed him, where she was staying, when he could see her again. She answered neither of them. Instead, she opened her banking app and stared at her savings, enough for maybe 2 months of living expenses if she was careful, not nearly enough to start over somewhere new. Her teaching contract at the international school had another 4 months on it, but working there would mean running into Miho's friends, his colleagues' children, constant reminders of what she'd lost. Her phone rang, vibrating in her hand. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her press accept. Amara. A woman's voice, Korean accent, cold as winter steel. This is Park Jisoo, Miho's colleague from the legal department. I'm with him right now, and he's drunk. Very drunk. He's at a bar near our office, and he's saying things about you that, a pause, heavy with judgment. I thought you should know before he does something he'll regret. Something that could affect his career. Amara's stomach twisted. What kind of things? That you cheated. That he wants to hurt someone, though he won't say who. That he wants to make you feel what he's feeling. Jisoo's voice softened almost imperceptibly. Look, I don't know you, and honestly, from what I've heard tonight, I think Miho could do better. Much better. But he loves you. Stupidly, completely, destructively loves you. And right now he's about to throw away his career making a scene at a bar full of senior partners. So if you care about him at all, if you ever cared about him, you'll get down here and stop him. The address came through text seconds after Jisoo hung up. A bar in Gangnam, upscale and expensive, exactly the kind of place where Miho would network with the partners at his firm. Amara stared at the address, then at her reflection in the ceiling mirror, disheveled, destroyed, unworthy of saving anyone when she couldn't even save herself. She could stay here. Pack her things tomorrow like Miho ordered. Disappear from his life cleanly and let him deal with the fallout of his pain in whatever way he needed. That would be the kind thing to do, the respectful thing, giving him the space he'd asked for. But she'd never been good at doing the kind thing when her heart was involved. 20 minutes later, she walked into the upscale bar in Gangnam, still wearing the dress from earlier that now felt like evidence of her crimes, her hair wild from running her hands through it, her makeup smeared beyond repair. The bar was dimly lit, all dark wood and leather, the kind of place where Korea's elite made deals over expensive whiskey. She found Miho at the bar surrounded by colleagues in expensive suits, including Jisoo, who was stunning in the way Korean beauty standards demanded: pale skin, delicate features, slim figure, perfectly styled hair. Designer dress that probably cost more than Amara's monthly salary. Everything Amara wasn't and could never be. Amara, Miho said when he saw her, his voice slurred but still sharp enough to cut. The entire group turned to look at her, and she felt their judgment like a physical weight. Come to watch me burn it all down? Come to see what you've done? Come to take you home, she said quietly, acutely aware of all the eyes on them, all the whispered conversations happening in rapid Korean that she couldn't follow. Home. He laughed, the sound harsh and broken. I don't have a home with you anymore, remember? You made sure of that when you fucked your African art dealer and then came to my bed like nothing had happened. Like I wouldn't know. Like I wouldn't taste him on you when I put my mouth. Miho, Jisoo interrupted sharply, her hand on his arm. That's enough. You're drunk and you're going to say something that will end up in Monday morning gossip. But Miho shook her off, his eyes fixed on Amara with an intensity that was half rage, half desperation. He stood, swaying slightly, and grabbed Amara's wrist hard enough to hurt. You want to know the worst part, he said, pulling her close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath, could see the redness in his eyes from crying. I'm still hard for you. Even knowing where you've been, what you've done, who's been inside you, I still want you. What does that make me, Amara? What does that say about me? Human, she whispered, her voice thick with tears. It makes you human, Miho. It makes you someone who loves despite being hurt. Or pathetic, he countered bitterly. He released her wrist and picked up his phone with fumbling fingers, scrolling through something before showing her the screen. Kofi sent me pictures. Of you. In his studio. Want to see what I've been looking at for the past hour? Her stomach dropped to her feet as she saw the images, not explicit, but intimate enough. Her laughing in Kofi's studio. Her examining one of his sculptures. Her sitting on his work table with her legs crossed, looking at something off camera. All innocent individually, but together they painted a picture of easy familiarity, of time spent, of connection. Miho, please, she started, reaching for the phone, but he pulled it away. Please what? Please don't show everyone here what kind of woman you really are. He looked around at his colleagues, at Jisoo's carefully blank expression, at the bartender pretending not to listen, at the senior partners watching this drama unfold with barely concealed interest. She's beautiful, isn't she? Exotic. Different. That's what I told myself when I introduced her to my mother 6 months ago. She's different, Mom. That's what makes her special. You'll see. His voice cracked. You think I don't know? Amara continued, her voice rising, months of swallowed resentment finally breaking free. You think I don't hear it every time your mother asks when I'm going back home, to Kenya, every time your friends forget to invite me to gatherings, every time someone asks you if you're just going through a phase with me? You loved me in private, Miho, but you were ashamed of me in public. You wanted me to smooth all my edges, speak quieter, laugh softer, straighten my hair, lighten my skin if I could, Be less African so your world would accept me. And when that didn't work, when I was still too foreign, too dark, too much, you expected me to just keep trying, keep diminishing myself until I disappeared entirely. That's not fair, Miho said, but his voice was weak, and everyone in the bar could hear the lie in it. Isn't it? Amara felt tears streaming down her face, but she didn't try to stop them. Let them see her pain. Let them judge her for it. I cheated on you, yes. I lied to you. I hurt you in unforgivable ways, and I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But don't you dare pretend you're innocent in this. Don't you dare act like I betrayed a perfect love when what we had was already broken from the start. Kofi saw me, Miho. All of me. He didn't need me to be quieter or smaller or more palatable. He didn't introduce me as his friend. He didn't ask me to change my hair or my accent or my opinions. And maybe that's why I couldn't stay away, because with him I could finally breathe without worrying that taking up space was an inconvenience. The bar was completely silent now, every eye on them, watching this public unraveling like it was theater. Jisoo had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide. The senior partners were exchanging looks that promised Monday morning conversations about Miho's judgment and professionalism. I loved you, Miho said finally, quietly, his anger deflating into pure grief. Despite everything you think I felt, I loved you more than I've ever loved anyone. I would have married you, Amara. I was going to propose next month. I had the ring picked out and everything. The revelation hit her like ice water. What? 3 carats, princess cut, set in platinum, he said, his voice flat now, emotionless. I was going to take you to Nami Island, to that tree-lined path you love. I was going to get down on one knee and ask you to spend your life with me, to have my children, to be my family. I was going to stand up to my mother, tell her this was happening whether she approved or not. I was finally going to be brave for you. He pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket, flipped it open to reveal a stunning diamond ring that caught the light like captured stars. But it doesn't matter now, does it? Because you didn't trust me enough to wait. You didn't believe I could change. So you found someone else instead. Amara stared at the ring, at the future she'd destroyed before she even knew it existed, and felt something inside her shatter completely. Miho, I didn't know. No, you didn't, he agreed, snapping the box closed and pocketing it again. Because you were too busy fucking Kofi to notice I'd been nervous for weeks. Too busy with your secret life to see I was building a real future for us. He drained his drink in one swallow. But I guess that's my answer, isn't it? You've already chosen. You just didn't have the courage to tell me until I forced the issue. I haven't chosen, Amara protested weakly, but even she could hear how pathetic it sounded. You did, Jisoo said quietly, speaking for the first time since Amara arrived. The moment you touched another man, you chose. The moment you lied to Miho's face, you chose. The moment you let him taste evidence of your betrayal, you chose. You just want to avoid the consequences of that choice. The words were harsh but true, delivered with a kind of cold clarity that cut through all of Amara's justifications and excuses. She looked at Jisoo, perfect, acceptable, Korean Jisoo who would never make Miho choose between love and family, who would fit seamlessly into his world, and saw her own future written there. She would never be Jisoo. She would never be enough for this world, no matter how much she changed or adapted or tried. Kofi was waiting when she arrived, standing in the doorway of his Itaewon studio like he'd known she'd come. He didn't ask questions, didn't say I told you so, didn't push for details. He just pulled her inside and held her while she cried, and when she finally stopped shaking, he led her to his bed and made love to her slowly, reverently, like she was precious instead of broken. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in his sheets that smelled like linseed oil and turpentine, Kofi said, "You're still in love with him." It wasn't a question. Amara didn't bother denying it. "Does that bother you?" she asked instead, her voice hoarse from crying. "Yes," Kofi admitted, his accent thick with emotion. "But I understand it. Love doesn't just disappear because someone hurts you. It lingers, haunts you, makes you stupid. Makes you do things you know you shouldn't." He traced patterns on her bare shoulder with callous fingers. "I'm in love with someone too. Back in Accra. Her name is Akojua. She's married now, has 2 children with a man her parents approved of. I left Ghana partly to escape her, to stop seeing her at family gatherings and market days, but she's still the first person I think of when I wake up. Then why are we doing this? Amara asked, turning to face him in the dim light filtering through his studio windows. Why are we using each other to forget people we can't have? Because it feels good, Kofi said simply, honestly. Because we're lonely. Because sometimes the wrong person at the right time is exactly what we need to survive. He cupped her face gently. Because we understand each other in ways our lovers never could. We know what it's like to be perpetually foreign, perpetually othered, perpetually trying to translate ourselves for people who will never fully understand. It was the most honest anyone had been with her all night, and somehow that made it worse. She'd blown up her relationship with Miho for this, for understanding, for comfort, for sex that felt good but solved nothing. For someone who could be a temporary sanctuary but never a permanent home. I should go, she said, sitting up and reaching for her clothes. You should stay, Kofi countered, his hand on her arm. At least for tonight. Let me take care of you. Let me help you forget, just for a few hours. And, because she was tired and broken and didn't want to face her empty love hotel room with its mirrors reflecting her failures, she stayed. She let Kofi hold her, let him whisper sweet things in Chui and Jie that she didn't understand but felt in her bones, let him make her body feel things her heart couldn't process. She let herself pretend, just for one night, that this could be enough. But when morning came, when sunlight streamed through his studio windows and illuminated all the sculptures of bodies reaching for something just out of grasp, she knew what she had to do. I'm going back to Kenya, she told him, her decision crystallizing as she spoke. My visa is up in 2 months anyway, and I think it's time. Past time. Kofi nodded slowly, like he'd expected this, like he'd maybe even hoped for it so he wouldn't have to be the one to end things. What about your job? Your life here? What life? Amara laughed, the sound hollow. I was living for Miho, building my entire existence around being his girlfriend, trying to fit into his world. But I don't fit, Kofi. I never will. Seoul isn't home. It's just a beautiful cage I convinced myself I wanted to live in because it came with someone who loved me. And what about me? He asked, his voice careful. What am I to you? She considered lying, softening it, but they'd had enough dishonesty for one lifetime. You're an escape, she said gently. A beautiful, necessary escape. But you're not a destination. And I need to stop running from myself long enough to figure out where I actually want to end up. Kofi didn't argue because they both knew she was right. They'd been using each other since the beginning, him to forget Akojua, her to escape Miho's world. It was never meant to be forever. It was barely meant to be at all.
We're in the final stretch of the story. Subscribe to Afro-K Passion Stories for more!
Amara spent the next 6 weeks dismantling her soul life piece by piece, like taking apart a puzzle she'd never managed to complete. She quit her job at the international school, enduring the disappointed looks from her supervisor who'd vouched for her visa. She sold her furniture on expat Facebook groups, watching strangers cart away the coffee table she and Miho had picked out at IKEA, the desk where she'd graded papers while he worked beside her. She avoided Gangnam entirely, terrified of running into Miho or Jesu or anyone from that night at the bar. But Seoul was smaller than she'd thought, and inevitably they crossed paths, once at a bookstore in Itaewon where they nodded awkwardly and pretended to browse different sections, once on the subway where they sat 3 cars apart and carefully avoided eye contact. Through mutual acquaintances, she heard things. That Miho was dating Jesu seriously now. That his mother was thrilled. That he seemed happy, or at least seemed to be trying. She was glad, or she told herself she was glad, because he deserved happiness even if it couldn't be with her. Kofi took her to the airport when the day finally came, his small sedan packed with her reduced life, 2 suitcases and a carry-on, everything else sold or donated or left behind. They didn't talk much during the drive, both knowing this was goodbye in every sense that mattered. For what it's worth, Kofi said as they stood outside Incheon Airport's departures terminal, I think you're brave for choosing yourself. For walking away from relationships that were comfortable but not complete. For what it's worth, Amara replied, adjusting her carry-on strap, I think you should go back to Ghana. Find a Kojua. Tell her how you feel. Fight for her or let her go completely, but stop living in limbo between what you had and what you could have. He smiled sadly, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. Maybe I will. Someday. When I'm brave enough. They hugged goodbye, not the passionate embrace of lovers, but the gentle hold of two people who'd found brief shelter in each other during a storm. Then she walked through those automatic doors into the airport, into the next chapter, into the unknown. The flight was long, giving her too much time to think. Somewhere over the Indian Ocean, suspended between continents, between her Korean life and her Kenyan future, Amara let herself cry one last time, for Miho, for what they might have been in a different world. For Kofi, for the escape he'd provided and the pain they'd shared. For the version of herself she'd lost in Seoul, the one who thought love meant disappearing into someone else's expectations. But mostly she cried for hope, for possibility, for the chance to start over and do it better this time. She opened her journal, the one Miho had given her for her birthday with her initials embossed on the cover, and started writing a new story. One where she was the main character instead of an accessory to someone else's life. One where she took up space unapologetically. One where she learned to be whole on her own before trying to be part of someone else's whole. When the plane touched down in Nairobi, her mother was waiting at arrivals with flowers and tears and questions Amara wasn't ready to answer. But for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe fully, like she didn't have to translate herself or shrink herself or perform herself. She was just Amara. Broken, complicated, flawed Amara. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that had always been enough and she just hadn't known it yet. This is where our journey ends, but it's also where new beginnings start. If this story moved you, broke you, made you think about your own relationships and choices, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button. Smash that like. And drop a comment telling me, was Amara the villain, the victim, or just human? Did she make the right choice going home, or should she have fought harder for Miho? Should Miho have been braver about his love, or was he right to protect his family relationships? Your comments matter because stories like this don't have easy answers. Love across cultures, the weight of family expectations, the cost of being true to yourself. These are real struggles people face every day. So tell me where you stand. Tell me what you would have done differently. Tell me if this story reminded you of your own life, your own choices, your own regrets.